All right, so now we're looking at our polynomials. We're continuing with the polynomials. First of all, we're going to talk about a coefficient. We mentioned before that polynomials are going to be terms, many terms. That's what poly means many, nomial means terms. So polynomials are many terms, and terms are those things separated with a plus or minus. So I see this is a term. I see here's another term, and here I have another term. Now, the coefficients, we're going to talk about the first number of the term with the sign included. So, for example, the thing here says identify the coefficient of each term in the expression. So here my coefficients are going to be -6, +1, and -3. Then it's asking us to give the number of terms. In this case, I have 3 terms. So once again, the coefficients are the leading number of each term with the sign included. So if I have a plus, obviously it's a positive. If I have a minus, it's negative. Now looking at my example B, my coefficients are going to be 5 and -1. All right, always separated with a comma. Asking me how many terms do I have here? I happen to have 2 terms. But then we're going to learn how to combine them as well. Simplify each expression by combining like terms if possible. So here, I noticed that both of my terms have the same letter, x to the third. So I'm just going to come and copy the x to the third. I know previous sections we came in, we said if it's the same base, add the exponents, but that was when we were dealing with multiplication. Now that we're combining uh, terms, we're combining our polynomials, we're dealing with addition and subtraction. So do not change the x to the third, just copy it. Now what we're going to do in order for us to combine these two terms, we're going to combine the coefficients, and then we're going to add them. So we're looking at -4, +6. We know that when they have different sign, we subtract, keep the sign of the large one. So it's going to be positive 2x to the third. Looking at my example B, all of these have x to the 6. So I'm just going to copy my x to the 6, and I'm going to combine my coefficients. I'm looking at 9 minus 14 plus 1. Right, there is a 1 in there. So 9 minus 14 plus 1. That should give me -4. So that's my coefficient. Now, let's say we had something like 5x to the third plus 2x to the third plus 2x to the fourth. I can only combine those that have the same letters. So those I will call 7x to the third plus 2x to the fourth. These two I cannot combine because the letters are different. Let's take a look at another example. Let's say I had something like 5rs plus 2sr. Notice I have the same letters, it's just different order. So those I can combine. The order does not matter. So I'm going to end up calling that one 7rs or 7sr, however you wish. So as long as it's the same letters with the same exponents, the order does not matter. Okay, so let's take a look at something else. Let's take a look at what we call a degree. And let's come up with an example. Let's say I had something like 7x to the third plus 2x squared y to the third plus 5x to the seventh y to the 2 minus 6 and y to the fourth. So each of these terms has a degree. And what we're going to call a degree, we're going to just add the exponents. Also, matter of fact, let me add an extra term here. Let's call this plus 5. Okay, so once again, the degree, we're just going to add the exponents. It doesn't matter if they're different letters. We're just going to add the exponents of each term. So this term right here, the degree is 3. Right? Once again, I'm just adding the exponents. Ignore the coefficient. Here, my second term, my degree is 5. Once again, I added the exponents. On my third term, my degree is 9. Here, my degree is 4. And this last one, because I don't see a letter, technically the degree is 0. because I could have x to the 0. So every term has a degree. Now you're going to be asked, what's the degree of the polynomial? That degree of the polynomial is the highest degree in there. So the degree of this polynomial will be 9 because that is the biggest number in there. So once again, the degree of the polynomial is the biggest number, the biggest degree of its terms. So from all the terms, I'm looking for the biggest. Now, whenever I have a monomial, we're going to call monomial when I only have one term. Mono means one, and I mean ma, and then nomial means term. So one term. An example of a monomial is going to be 2x to the third. Once again, terms are those things separated with a plus or minus. I could include letters if I want to, like y to the fourth. I could include more, but that is still one term. Binomial. Bi means two, nomial means term. So two terms, I'm looking at something as 2x plus 5. Right? There's a plus or minus separating two terms. A trinomial. For us to have a trinomial, let me think of 3x squared plus 4x minus 7. Notice there are three terms. So there's your monomial, one term, binomial, or trinomial. There are names for more terms, but we're just going to go up to three terms. Now, looking at an example here, it says simplify each polynomial if possible, then give the degree and tell whether the polynomial is a monomial, binomial, trinomial, or none of these. So looking at A, I cannot combine these because they have different letters. This is x to the third. This one doesn't have an x. So when I simplify, I get 2x to the third plus 5. Right? There's nothing I can do. When I'm looking at the degrees, I know the first term here, the degree is 3. Or actually, let me take a look at it here. The degree is 3, and here the degree is 0. So the degree of the polynomial is 3 because it's the biggest degree there. And there are two terms, so I'm going to call this binomial. Let's take a look at my example B. I notice all of these have an x, so I'm just going to copy the x, and I'm just going to combine the coefficients. I'm looking at 6 minus 8 plus 13. 6 minus 8 plus 13, that should give you 11. So when I combine this, I get 11x. My degree, my exponents, it's x to the 1, so my degree is 1. In this case, I get a monomial because it's only one term. Find the value of the polynomial when part A, x equals -2, and part B, x equals 3. So what we're going to be doing this, to solve this, replace x with -2. So I'm looking at 3 times -2 to the fourth plus 5, -2 to the third, minus 4 times the -2 minus 4. Order operations, I don't have to do exponents before I multiplied. So let me ignore that multiplication. I'm just going to do 3, and I'm going to do the exponents. Remember, the parentheses only takes care of the inside. So multiply -2, 4 times. So -2 times -2 times -2 times -2. That should give you 16. And I have plus 5. Once again, I'm just doing exponents. -2 to the third. -2 times -2 times -2. That should give me -8. And I have minus 4 times a -2, and then minus 4. Once again, I was just doing exponents. Then let me take care of my multiplications. 3 times 16, I'm going to call that 48. Here, these two numbers with the signs included, +5 times -8, I'm going to call that -40. This other two numbers, -4 times -2, I'm going to call that +8. And lastly, -4. So now I'm just going to combine my numbers, just all addition or subtraction. 48 minus 40, that's 8, plus 8, that's 16. 16 minus 4 should give me 12. So that was part A. Now for part B, instead of -2, do +3. And then basically do exponents first, and then multiply it, and then lastly, add or subtract. I think you guys get the idea, so I'm going to skip that part. Now here, to add the polynomials. We're going to learn how to add polynomials. First of all, what I will suggest is write the polynomials without parentheses, in case we have parentheses, and without the word and, or from, or words that we choose like that. So first of all, I'm going to write the first polynomial, 6x to the third minus 4x squared plus 3 minus 2x to the third plus 7x squared minus 5. So once again, write all the terms, and now combine your like terms. The highest exponent here is x to the third. I can see them right there, x to the third. So I'm going to write my x to the third and combine the coefficients. So 6 minus 2 gives me 4. So in fact, I'm even going to come and cross them out, so I know I already used them. After x to the third, I should have x to the second, which I see here and here. So x to the second. When I combine my coefficients, -4 plus 7, that gives me a +3. Cross them out, so no, you use them. After x squared, I have x, but I don't see any. Lastly, I'm going to combine 3 minus 5, which I'm going to call that -2. And I cross them out, so I know I already used them. The reason why I cross out my terms, just in case I don't see one, and I forgot to combine it. So if I finish and one of my terms is not crossed, then that means I did not use it, and more likely I have my answer incorrect. Looking at my example 2. The first term, the first polynomial, I'm just going to write it the way it is. 2x to the fourth minus 6x squared plus 7. When we're dealing with addition, copy the second polynomial as it is. I'm just going to do minus 3x to the fourth plus 5x squared plus 2. So remember I said write everything without parentheses. Now combine your exponents. So combine your like terms, I mean. The highest exponent that I see is x to the fourth. So I'm just going to copy my x to the fourth. When I combine my coefficients, 2 minus 3, that gives me -1. So I'm going to cross those out. After x to the fourth, I should have an x to the third, but I don't see any. After x to the third, I should have x to the second, which I see there. -6, +5. Right, let me write down my x to the second. -6, +5, that should give me a -1. So I'm going to cross those out. After x to the second, I should have an x, but I don't see an x in there. And lastly, I'm going to combine 7 plus 2, which I'm just going to call +9. I double check that I did cross every term, so that is my answer. Now, lastly, let me take a look at this one, because we have the word from. I know when we were talking about word problems, when we have the word from, my first polynomial is this one that we see here. So let me write it out. I'm going to write 11x to the third plus 2x squared minus 8. But then I'm doing the subtraction. So whenever we're going to do a subtraction, make sure you switch the signs of every coefficient of the second term. Remember, this is my second term. Just change the signs. So I'm going to go minus 6x to the third plus 4x to the second minus 2. Once again, in subtraction, just change the sign of the second polynomial. Once again, because of the word from, this polynomial here was the first polynomial, and this one right here is the second polynomial. So once again, in a subtraction, change the signs of the second polynomial. Then just combine your like terms. When it comes to x to the third, which is the biggest one, let me write down my x to the third, I combine the coefficients, 11 minus 6, that is 5. Then I should have an x to the second, Let me write down my x to the second. When I combine the coefficients, 2 plus 4, that gives me positive 6. I don't have an x, so then I have negative 8 minus 2, that gives me negative 10. I make sure I cross out all my terms, so I'm okay. Now looking at this other example here, let me write my first polynomial as 5x minus 2. Because I have a minus, change the signs of each term on the second polynomial. So I'm going to go minus 3x plus 8. So my highest exponent that I see is x. When I combine my coefficients, 5 minus 3, that gives me 2. Now I have negative 2 plus 8. I'm going to call that 6. Cross them out. I notice I use all my terms, so I'm okay. Now, let's take a look at something long, looking at this one. So when we have the first polynomial, let me just write it as it is. 6p to the fourth minus 8p to the third plus 2p minus 1. Remember I said when we have a subtraction, I see a minus there. We have a subtraction, we're going to change the signs of the second polynomial. So I'm going to have plus 7p to the fourth minus 6p squared plus 12. Notice I changed each of the signs. I have a plus, but we know when we do plus, I'm just going to copy this last polynomial as it is. Plus p to the fourth minus 3p plus 8. Remember I said write everything without parentheses. So that's exactly what I just did. Write everything without parentheses. When there was a minus, I changed the sign of the following polynomial. When there was a plus, I just copied the polynomial as it was. All right, so now when I'm going to combine my like terms, I see that p to the fourth is the biggest exponent. I'm going to underline them so I can see them. So p to the fourth, that's the biggest one. And I'm just going to go 6 plus 7 plus 1. Notice I was just adding the coefficients. 6 plus 7 plus 1 should give me 14. Then I should have p to the third, which I only see one of them. So I'm just going to copy it as it is, minus 8p to the third. Then p to the second, I only see one of them. It's right here, minus 6p to the second. So again, it's the only one there, so I'm just going to copy it as it is. Then p to the 1, which is just p. There's that one, and there's this one. So I'm just going to go 2 minus 3, which give me negative 1p. Once again, like we saw in previous sections, the 1, if you don't write the 1, it's okay. If you just write minus p instead of minus 1p, it's the same thing. Lastly, let me look at my numbers with no letter. So I have negative 1 plus 12 plus 8. So negative 1 plus 12 plus 8. That should give you 19. I noticed that I crossed out all my terms, so I'm okay. So again, if there was a term in there I did not cross, then I didn't use it, and more likely my answer is incorrect. So that's how we add and subtract polynomials.